I'd like to call the meeting to order. At this time, I'd like to ask Reverend Chuck Christensen of the Fitzgerald Methodist Church at Marcus Corner to lead us in our invocation.
Incredibly important. You have on your plates the lives and the futures of so many people. So many of our youngsters who are going to grow up in St. Tammany will be impacted by what y'all decide here tonight. And I thank you for taking your time and sacrificing your time to come and do this. Now, I know that this is a confluence of church and state, of religion and politics, and I'm okay with that. I am. And I understand that we all come from different traditions, and some of us might not believe in God, but that's okay. Because what I'm going to pray for tonight for y'all is that your minds would be cleared, that your hearts would be pure, and that your consciences, when you leave here tonight, will be clean. Because you will have done what you believe in your heart is the right thing to do. Would you bow your heads with me, please, and pray? Holy God, right now I thank you for these people. God, I thank you for on a Thursday night when they could be doing anything other than this, they are in this room. And God, they are deciding the future of this parish. That God, they are contemplating the future of our young people. Whether it be a sports complex in Slidell or whether it be fracking, God, they are going to make some hard decisions in this body. God, I pray right now that your Holy Spirit would descend upon their minds, clear away distractions. God, give them wise minds, give them clear discernment, and God, give them clean consciences. That, God, they might make the decisions that they truly feel is the best for this parish, for all people, for Hispanic people and black people and white people and Asian people, God, everybody in this parish. Because this is one body united. Even though we might have differences, God, they are here to decide the best right. And so, God, I pray right now for all these wonderful, sacrificial people in this room, that you would rest within them through the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus the Christ. Amen.
Amen. At this time, Ms. O'Brien will lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Dean? Here. Mr. Sharp? Here. Mr. Thompson? Mr. Faulkner? Mr. Gould? Here. Mr. Groby? Here. Mr. Tanner?
Here.
Mr. Canulet? Mr. Belisario?
Here.
Ms. O'Brien? Here. Mr. Stefanczyk?
Here.
Mr. Bender?
Here.
Mr. Artigue? Here. Mr. Smith?
Here.
We have a quorum.
We have a relatively short agenda tonight, so we're going to stick strictly to the agenda as been published. And the first thing on is under presentations. I'm going to get that. Which is the introduction of junior council members for February. Mr. Bender.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to introduce, and I'm going to get you to stand up a little bit so everybody can see you. I was able to introduce Blake Babin to some of my colleagues on the council, but this is Blake Babin, everyone, and in the audience. He's our junior council member for February. Blake is in 7th grade at Boyette Junior High. incredibly, his mom, dad, and my oldest son all had the first day of kindergarten together. And so his dad's out there. I think he put eyes on Blake's mom in kindergarten. And they went all the way up through high school and everything together. And sure enough, Brian Babin and Jennifer Carlin got married. Blake is the first of 6 wonderful children. And I can tell you, not only have I known his parents really almost all of their lives, I know both sets of his grandparents for a long time. Very good young man, great role model for his younger brothers and sisters. And so, Blake, I'll stop preaching. And we have for you St. Tammany Parish Government Certificate of Recognition. St. Tammany Parish formally recognizes Blake Babin for serving as junior council member at the February 5th, 2015 council meeting, and it's signed by Ms. Pat, who you met, and myself, and you met our vice chairman, Mr. Dean, but the gentleman who's conducting the meeting is our chairman, Mr. Tanner, okay? So thank you, and you get an official St. Tammany Parish Government pin for your lapel. And we're going to ask you just a couple of quick questions, Blake. This is going to be an easy test, okay? What's your favorite hobby?
Basketball.
Basketball. Dad loves that. He's a baseball coach. What's your favorite subject?
PE.
Hey! If basketball is your favorite hobby, PE is the best thing to do. Most of us up here, our favorite was probably recess. So that's good. And you want to go to college later on?
Yeah.
And what would you like to study in college and become?
Engineer.
An engineer. There you go. Fine young man. Let's hear it for Blake Babin. And Blake's going to stay, Mr. Chairman, for a while and participate right here next to me. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Bennett, thank you for bringing Blake and recognizing him. It's always good to recognize our young people. Next thing is the certificate of recognition to Ruby Bowes in celebration of her 103rd birthday. Mr. Grove.
First time I've actually given a certificate of this nature to a constituent, and I'm very proud to do so. Last month, if you remember, we had a centenarian that was 105. Miss Ruby's trying to catch up really fast. With this certificate, it says, St. Tammany Parish Council Certificate of Recognition. The Parish Council is honored tonight to be able to honor a citizen of Lacombe. This citizen is one of the parish's rare centenarians, Ruby Bowes. Miss Ruby was born November 18, 1911 in Point Pleasant, Louisiana, and is celebrating her 103rd birthday. She moved to Burwood early in her childhood as her father was the lighthouse keeper. Each morning, she would have to board a boat to cross the Mississippi to get to school, and our kids think we got it rough. They have it rough. Her first car was a Model T Ford at the age of 14. She worked at an orange farm in Triumph, Louisiana. At an early point in her life, she ran the post office in town. She is an original Rosie the Riveter, as she worked and helped assemble airplane sides during World War II at the Higgins Industry in New Orleans. She has seen the wonders of our modern world and celebrated the simpler past many people wish for today. Our Parish Council wishes to deeply congratulate Miss Bowes on her 103rd birthday and wish her many more years of happiness and blessings. But before we get to that, I'm going to just list, I had to look these up, some of the things Miss Bowes has been around to see invented, starting with 1913, the zipper, the electric drill, radio circuit, pop-up toaster, lie detector, oh, we hate those up here, modern-day can openers, car radio, first voice recognition machine, artificial heart in 1941, clock radios, disposable diapers, which we all love, alkaline batteries, the modem, pacemakers, and the list goes on and on and on. She has seen everything we take for granted. She saw it before it was there. And with that, I'd like to present her with some flowers on behalf of the Council of St. Tammany Parish. And just kind of heavy. I am again honored very much, ma'am. Thank you, Ms. Rose.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody, so much. Mom, it's been a pleasure with some of the things she could tell you about. You got these? My husband. Thanks, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Tell 'em bye.
This time I'd like to welcome Dr. Charles Preston, our parish coroner, for a presentation. Dr. Preston.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, esteemed council members. I'll tell you, this is a hard act to follow. I think I've missed my chance to be the junior councilman, but I sure hope that I'm around for Mr. Groby to give me some flowers at 103, you know. Again, I want to thank you for taking your time. I am here, I think, with good news tonight. I am here to ask for a budget amendment to the 2015 budget. I will say I have to revise my remarks a little from the Agenda Committee meeting when I had come to ask for $250,000. I realize now we're dealing with only the 2015 budget, and so I'm asking for an amendment up to, but not to exceed, $188,000 to fund a new full-time pathologist and a new full-time morgue technician for the Louisiana Forensic Science Center in St. Tammany. We've been doing autopsies for St. Tammany Parish in Washington. As of this month, we've reached an agreement to begin to do autopsies for Iberville Parish as well. We are very close to reaching an agreement with 2 more parishes. And frankly, I'll be attending the Louisiana Coroners Association Conference this month, the 27th and the 28th, and I'll be shaking a lot of hands and looking for some more people who want to come and do business here in St. Tammany Parish. But we're at a point where we need extra help. Last year, Dr. DeFada, who is our sole forensic pathologist, oversaw at least 300 autopsies in St. Tammany Parish's center. 238 were for St. Tammany Parish, 59 were for Washington Parish, and while we sent 4 to Jefferson, it is still up to Dr. DeFada to rule on those cases. And as you all probably know, there's a lot more to the process than just doing the autopsy. He has to review all of the medical records as well, review the investigator's report to come to that final decision of what the cause and manner of death is. The National Association of Medical Examiners recommends no more than 250 cases per year per pathologist, and ideally is around 200. In Jefferson Parish, where there are 3 full-time pathologists, they're each doing about 150 autopsies each. So we're really already at the point where Dr. DeFada could use some help. In addition to being the full-time forensic pathologist, he is also the lab director for the DNA lab and the toxicology lab. And of course, this is just natural that that falls under the purview of a pathologist. With the addition of these 3 additional parishes, I believe that we're going to add probably around 200 autopsies, and that'll bring us to 500. So between the 2 full-time pathologists, that would be right around the 250 number that the National Association of Medical Examiners recommends. I think that there are many advantages to expanding the services of the coroner's office. First of all, as I mentioned, Dr. DeFada could use a little help. He virtually is on call all day, every day to make the final decision when the investigators call as to whether these cases come in or not. And having another forensic pathologist would help him to split that duty so that he wouldn't have to be available all the time. There's the advantage of having peer-to-peer review. while he and I discuss cases, it is much better if he can discuss it with another forensic pathologist, and particularly the sudden unexpected infant death investigations are particularly difficult, and they are really critical that we arrive at the right decision on each of those cases. So, you know, that two minds is better than one. Having another forensic pathologist, I think, is a clear advantage. Additionally, as I kind of had alluded to earlier, the coroner's office has adopted a paid time off policy, much like the parish. We are trying to avoid deferred liability of carrying paid time off from year to year to year to year, and so last year we switched to a paid time off policy. Dr. DeFada is an employee of the coroner's office, and so he will be entitled to paid time off. Our policy is slightly different than the parish's in that we are taking a use it or lose it posture. So if they don't use the paid time off during the year, they're not going to be able to carry it over to the next year. And I'm almost certain that every employee, therefore, is going to use that time off. For virtually every other position, we have a contingency of part-time investigators or administrative personnel that can fill that gap. Without an additional pathologist, we don't have that position, and that would mean then we would have to send those cases out. Those cases get expensive to send out. We currently use Jefferson Parish, and the case costs $1,125 at a minimum to send that out. We looked at trying to bring in a pathologist. As I mentioned earlier at the Agenda Committee meeting, the forensic pathologists are few and far between, and they are very proud of themselves. And so when we reached out to find coverage, they quoted us a price of $1,000 a case. Well, that's $100 more than we charge. So that's just not fiscally feasible to bring a pathologist into the facility. And it doesn't give us the advantages of hiring a pathologist, which I really think is probably the best thing. As I mentioned, we are bringing them in to a job that is already established, that the pay grades are already established. The pathologist currently works at a pay grade 21, step 7. The morgue tech works at a pay grade 8, step 3. I am very hopeful, of course, that we're going to find some new help at a lower rate than that. But at the most, I would anticipate that I would want to have $188,000 in order to cover those salaries for the rest of the year. Again, I think that this is critical to fulfilling the goal of regionalization, of being able to cover more areas, in addition to the advantages that I mentioned. That would also put us in a position to then partner with universities and increase the teaching capacity of the Forensic Science Center. So I think that this is good news. This is moving forward with the coroner's office and expanding it, but we need to build the infrastructure in order to support that additional business. And I thank you all for your time. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Preston. Mr. Bender, is there anything that we need to initiate tonight to get this process started?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I've spoken with our legal counsel, Mr. Hand and Mr. Savant and Don. We would do a budget amendment in March, okay? And as Dr. Preston said, and Mr. Dean was here chairing the agenda review meeting, some of us, we were here. I think originally Dr. Preston was looking at the whole year, but then realized he needs it just for the rest of 2015. So we would simply put a budget amendment up. It would come out of funds that are available that we're holding on to as per the state law that was passed when Dr. Galvin was still in office. So,
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions? Dr. Preston, administration, audience. Steve.
I move that we send this to Finance Committee for drafting the proposed amendments.
I'll second that motion.
Mr. Stefanczyk and Mr. Artie. Is there any discussion on the motion to refer it to Finance Committee? Anybody in the audience? Ready to vote? Please vote.
Mr. Stefanczyk? Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Thank you, Dr. President.
Thank you very much. I
Mr.
appreciate
Chairman.
y'all's help.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Could I just make one quick comment? I want to thank Dr. Preston for coming tonight and to the agenda review. Our chairman from last year, our past chairman, really made a great point last year at some point when he said, we've seen Dr. Preston more, and he's smiling, he knows that. And you know what? That's also good news, because the people of the parish built this facility, as he said to me one day, and by the way, so my colleagues will know, Mr. Falconer had asked me to operate as kind of a council contact with Dr. Preston, and our new chairman asked me to continue to do the same. Obviously, we all have access to Dr. Preston, but he mentioned to me a week or so ago, and this isn't a pleasant subject, but the word autopsy has been said multiple times tonight. That facility has 3 autopsy tables. There's a reason it was built for the size it is. There's a reason there's 3 autopsy tables, and I think Dr. Preston is absolutely on the right track of trying to kind of globalize or regionalize the use of that facility. So I just want to thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, pursuant to Louisiana Revised Statute 42:19.1, notice of consideration of action regarding service charges. Notice is hereby giving that Road Lighting District Number 9 of the Parish of St. Tammany, State of Louisiana, and Road Lighting District Number 10 of the Parish of St. Tammany, State of Louisiana, will meet on Thursday, April the 2nd, 2015, at 6 p.m. at the St. Tammany Government Complex, 21490 Coop Drive, Mandeville, Louisiana, at which time there will be consideration of action regarding the renewal of the levy and collection of annual service charges dedicated to paying utility charges for road lighting and maintaining and operating road lighting facilities and equipment within each of the districts. Thank you. At this time, Mr. Thompson and Mr. Sharp and I would like to meet Ms. Kay Copenal at the podium.
This is a particular pleasure for me. Kay and I grew up together, family friends with their family from the time they moved back from Virginia, where they lived for just a short time. Grew up with her, and we were the brother and sister that neither one of us never had. So we certainly hate to see her go. Whereas on February the 20th, 1990, Brenda K. Jenkins began her career as St. Tammany Parish as a field technician for the Department of Public Works, where she stayed until 1997. And whereas in 1997, Kay transferred to the Department of Engineering as a secretary, and whereas in 2000, Kay left the Department of Engineering and joined the council office as a council secretary. And whereas now, 15 years later, Kay Copenal, after having accumulated 25 years of service to the St. Tammany Parish, is retiring from her position as senior assistant to the council to be able to spend time with her family And whereas, during her tenure with the council office, Kay has assisted virtually every council member, past and present, in one fashion or another. Now, therefore, we, the current council members of St. Tammany Parish, wish Kay Copenhaugh well in her retirement and would like her to know that she will be missed by all.
Thank y'all very much. Okay, you want to say something?
You said enough over here, Rick.
While you're taking your seats again, Mr. Chairman, I want to add my congratulations and my thanks to Kay. When I was on the council for 8 years, she was there helping me too, and I appreciate everything you've done for the parish throughout the years. And good luck and have fun with those grandchildren. All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Goode.
having known Kay and worked with her since 1996, the amount of dedication that she gave to anybody who came before her and asked for help was an incredible thing. She always went well over what she needed to do to try to help people. And the people of this parish are going to miss Kay Copenhaugh.
I agree, Mr. Goode. Thank you for your remarks. Mr. Grovey.
I want to add that, as crazy as this may sound, she has kept me on several occasions from looking like a complete idiot as an elected official. That's how good Kay was. Thank you, Kay.
It has to be outstanding to do that, Jack. He walked into that. The devil made me say that. Okay, at this time, we'll continue with the agenda and go to the consent calendar. We actually have only one thing that's been pulled off, and that is resolution number 1, which is 4263, Council Series 4263. But at this time, I'd like to go down the road and see if any council member has anything that they would like additionally pull from the agenda. Mr. Dean? Mr. Sharp? Mr. Thompson? Mr. Falcon? Mr. Goode? Mr. Grovey? Mr. Belisario?
I want to pull resolution number 2, C-4264, for a brief presentation.
All right, that's Council Series number C-4264. That's correct. Are there other ones? Ms. O'Brien? No, sir. Mr. Stefanzi? Mr. Bender? Mr. Artigue? Mr. Smith? Administration? Anybody in the audience would like something pulled?
Move to approve the consent calendar.
Motion's been made and seconded by Mr. Bender to approve the consent calendar. Any discussion? Hearing none, please vote.
Mr. Stefanczyk?
Thank you.
That button's sticking.
Yes.
Motion is unanimous, 1 absent.
Okay, we will go to resolution number 1, which is Council Series 4263, resolution authorizing the budget for costs of outside counsel regarding the parish's ability to control hydraulic fracturing activities within the parish and provide for other matters in connection therewith.
Move to approve.
Motion been made and second to approve. Discussion.
I got an amendment. The resolution that's on there in the last whereas paragraph and the last paragraph talks about where the money's coming from, and it basically the last sentence of each one of those says the parish general fund shall provide the remainder of the funds needed to fund the litigation. The amendment would be the parish risk fund would provide the remainder of the funds needed to fund the litigation. That's the only change I want to make, is take out the word general and put in risk on those two sentences.
Your second. Have an amendment, Mr. Dean, second. There's an amendment to the resolution to strike out parish general and add risk. Is there any discussion? Steve, is that your light? Anybody, administration in the audience? Vote, please.
Motion is unanimous, 1 absent.
All right, that brings us back to the resolution as amended. Is there any other discussion? It's been moved and seconded already. Yeah. I just for clarification, I want to make sure everybody understands that this is adding an additional $50,000 to the litigation fund, which has been recommended by legal counsel. And so at this time we'll vote on it. All those, please vote. Jake.
Motion is unanimous, 1 absent.
Okay, now we'll move to Council Series 4264, which is a resolution approving the holding of an election in St. Tammany Parish Recreation District Number 16, State of Louisiana, on Saturday, May the 2nd, 2015, to authorize the incurring of debt and issuance of bonds and the levy of special taxes therein. Come on, Ms. Pruitt.
You need to make the motion.
Yes, Chair. Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to move forward based on a unanimous vote by the Agenda Review Committee last Wednesday evening.
And I'll second.
Motion made by Mr. Belisario, seconded by Mr. Stefanti. And we have the people here who did a lot of hard work in trying to put this thing together, and at this time we'll recognize them.
Thank you, Mr. Tanner. I'm Sharon Hewitt. I'm chairman of your newest Recreation District, Recreation District 16. We have been hard at work over the last 3 years, developing a master plan, working with the citizens and the elected officials in our community, and we are here tonight to put a proposal on the table that we would like to have our citizens vote. So the resolution before you is asking for us to be on the May 2nd, 2015 ballot so that our citizens can vote as to whether or not they would like to have a new recreation facility. We're calling it Camellia Park. It will be in the area of the Slidell Airport. And you have some information in front of you, and I'll just highlight a couple of things. We are comprised of wards 8 and 9, with the exception of the city of Slidell and the Recreation District 9, which is the Oak Harbor, Eden Isles, Lakeshore Estates area. We have a 7-member board. I'm fortunate to have a few of them with me here tonight, and I would just like to introduce them and show my appreciation for the work they've done. Our vice chairman is Sean Burks. Our treasurer is Mike Gambrell. Our secretary is Pam McClellan. And one of our commissioners is Sean Dahl. and they have worked tirelessly with me to get us to this point. We feel like we have kind of done our homework. Our original proposal that we rolled out at the end of August had us building in the Highway 190 area about a 300-acre park. The construction cost on that park was going to be $21 million with a $1.3 million a year operating budget, which would have cost the homeowners in our area $13.15 mils. After talking to a number of groups over the fall, we got a lot of great feedback. Two things we heard loud and clear. We love the idea of this park, and it costs too much money. So we went back to the drawing board, and we found a new site. The site, as I mentioned earlier, is in the area of the Slidell Airport. The big cost savings for us at that site is that we're able to just purchase the 75 acres or so that we need for Phase 1, and while they reserve the remaining 300 or so acres for us for our future expansions, as opposed to the original plan where we had to buy the entire 300 acres up front. That saved us about $7 million in Phase 1 cost. And the other thing that we did that I think shows that we're trying to do what's best for our community is we have moved baseball and softball out of our initial phase into a future phase. The new information that came before us in the fall was that a private investor in our area was going to build a park with 7 baseball fields and service kind of the same population that we were targeting. So, again, we thought we were doing the right thing, and we have moved baseball into a future phase to be considered at a later date. So what we're proposing then is 2 propositions. The first proposition is a bond for $14 million. It's a 4.75 bond, 20-year bond, 4.75 mils. The second proposition is to operate and maintain the park. It's a 4.15 mil proposition. It will generate about $800,000 a year for an operating budget. And we think this is going to be a wonderful addition to our community. Not only will it improve the quality of life for our citizens, but we think it's going to bring a lot of economic development to our area. So thank you for giving us the privilege of working on this project, and we hope that you'll continue to support us.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any discussion on the council? Administration? Anybody in the audience want to speak? All right, we have a motion in the second. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 1 absent.
I lost my sheet somewhere. Is this mine? Okay, we're ready to go to appeals. All right, this time we will go to appeals. The first appeal is Thomas Trapp appealing zone condition denial on January the 6th to rezone .997 acres located north of Highway 190 from NC4 neighborhood institutional to HC2 highway commercial, Ward 9, District 11. Mr. Stefanski.
Is Mr. Trapp? Yeah, I've never met him, so I don't know what he looks like. This is Tommy Trapp. I want to ask you a question, first of all, before he goes through a presentation. Anybody in the audience opposed to this? There was nobody showed up at zoning that is opposed to this. Unless you want to speak, I'm really ready to make a motion. So.
Okay.
This is a piece of property out along Highway 190, which is zoned NC4, and then when everything looks at it, it should be HC2. Next, like other properties close to it, some of them are NC4, some of them are HC2. This was done in the comprehensive rezoning, and what he's planning on building there is a storage facility. Doesn't fit under anything except HC2. And so it was taken to the zoning commission. Nobody opposed it, but they voted it down, I think 6-5 or something like that, whatever it was, or 2 votes. And but anyhow, this is the right neighborhood for this kind of a thing, so I'm going to move to override the zoning commission and approve the appeal.
Motion by Mr. Stefanczyk, seconded by Mr. Artigue. Any discussion? Administration? Anybody in the audience? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 1 absent.
Thank you all very much.
Move to introduce the ordinance.
Moved by Mr. Stefanczyk, seconded by Mr. Belisario to introduce the ordinance. The next appeal is Gregory Luckett appealing Zoning Commission approval on January the 6th, 2015 to rezone 6 acres located north of Powell Drive, west of Doss Drive, from Highway 2 Commercial District to I-2 Industrial District, Ward 9, District 14. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We want to ask the original petitioner, Mr. Richard, if he would come up to the podium at this time. And we do not see in the audience the appellant, but we do have information and knowledge and understanding that the appellant as well as the original petitioner, Mr. Richard, have reached an amicable agreement on moving this petition forward. And so for the record, and I just want to verify with the Secretary that they have received the necessary documentation as it relates to that agreement, but we have received evidence that it has been placed into its proper place. And so with that being understood, unless Mr. Richard has some comments that he wants to make at this time, we're going to go ahead and make a motion to concur with the zoning commission level with the amendments.
Thank you very much. That'd be great.
Mr. Chairman, we would like to make that motion at this time then.
Mr. Smith and Mr. Artigue. Any discussion amongst the council? Administration? Anybody in the audience want to make a comment? Hearing none, let's vote.
Motion is unanimous, 3 absent.
Thank you.
All right, this time we'll go. We need Mr. Smith. We need a motion for introduce the ordinance. Motion made and second to introduce the ordinance. Mr. Smith and Mr. Belisario. Thank you. Next is ordinances for adoption. Ordinance number 1 is ordinance calendar number 5206, ordinance amending the official zoning map to reclassify 3.02 acres from HC3 to Industrial 1, Ward 8, District 14, approved 5/16/14, introduced 6/5/14, postponed from 7/10/14, and I understand, Mr. Smith, you want to postpone again? You make a motion? Motion made and seconded, Mr. Smith, Mr. Bender, to postpone.
Postpone until June, I'm sorry.
To June.
Yes, June 1st. Or the meeting in June.
Any discussion? Administration? Audience? Oh, we got a quiet audience and a quiet administration. We might get through here tonight. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
The next is ordinance number 5325, an ordinance to extend for 6 months the moratorium on multifamily structures on property within an unincorporated area of Council District Number 12.
Mr. Chairman, I make that motion.
Mr. Bender and Mr. Artigue. Mr. Bender, you have some discussion. Anybody else have any discussion? No. Anybody in the audience? Seeing none, please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 1 absent.
Next ordinance is ordinance calendar 5326, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 10.13 acres from A1 to PF1, Ward 5, District 6. This is scheduled to be heard at the zoning and introduced at tonight's meeting. I think it. No, okay.
I'll second.
Motion made and second to postpone. Discussion. We could adopt it tonight. Yeah.
It's already been heard.
It's heard.
It's been heard.
It was heard and approved. We introduced it early. Okay. All right, I have a motion to adopt.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded to adopt. Discussion. Anybody in the audience, please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 1 absent.
Ordinance calendar number 5327, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 32.95 acres from HC3 to A4. Mr. Smith.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adopt.
Mr. Smith and Mr. Artigue. Any discussion? Anybody in the audience? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 1 absent.
Ordinance calendar 5328, an ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 6.2 acres from A3 to A4, Ward 4, District 7.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Groby, seconded by Mr. Belisario. Is there any discussion? Anybody? None here? Ready? Vote.
Motion is unanimous, 1 absent.
Ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 6,750 square feet from A4A to A5, Ward 9, District 13.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Artigue, seconded by Mr. Smith. Is there any discussion? Administration? Audience? Hearing none, please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 1 absent.
Number 7 is ordinance calendar number 5330, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 43.11 acres from CB1 and PF2 to PF1, Ward 1, District 1.
So move.
Moved by Mr. Dean, seconded by Mr. Thompson. Is there discussion? Administration, audience, please vote.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Ordinance calendar 5331, an ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 4.89 acres from A3 to A4, Ward 4, District 7.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Groby, seconded by Mr. Belisario. Is there any discussion? Anybody in the audience? Seeing none, please vote.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Ordinance calendar number 5332, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 60.129 acres from PUD to CB1, Ward 9, District 11.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Stefantik, seconded by Mr. Belisario. Anybody on the council have
Chairman, I
discussion?
believe that there's speakers from the, I don't know whether speakers from the audience or not, but I think there are. There's audience speakers.
Yes, I know. I have them right here. Charlotte Lowry Collins.
I appreciate your time. I live within a quarter of a mile of the proposed park, and we're very appreciative of the fact that this is being changed from PUD, which had quite a bit of opposition, to the CB1. However, myself and several of the residents originally filed an appeal against it, hoping that a document we had given at the December 2nd introduction meeting would be noticed. We've not heard back on many of those comments beyond December 2nd. And in speaking with my councilman, Steve suggested that we not appeal it, but rather that we try to move forward to see that legislation could be minimized to impact the fact that most of these homes around there are A2, almost everything surrounding it. And we are trying to stick with our decibel level, our silence level, everything that makes it home for us. My family has owned that property since the 1970s, about 40 years, and it is very big on fishing because it is so quiet. It's very private. Most people have large acreage and they move there for the privacy. So while we're not against the ballpark, we would like to minimize the effects. And I think that numbers, I emailed this to each of you, and it was to have been put in your mailboxes. Hopefully you have a copy of it. It starts off like this. Does anyone have this?
Yes.
Good, thank you. It's quite a long document. That's why I had hoped that you could get it ahead of time. But if you could just flip back to the last page, I can make this very short. I understand I have 2 minutes, and I will fit into that. Numbers 1, 2, and 3, I believe, have been agreed upon orally. But we have nothing in writing yet. We have no signatures. We have met with everyone separately, and this came from the board of the Bayou Liberty Association. Number 4 is the one that we are particularly concerned about, and that is if games begin later than 8 o'clock, we'll go beyond the time. And then number 9, the decibel levels. The 50 is what is A2. That is what our home is kept to. Is that my time? Is that what that was?
Yes, that's your 2 minutes.
Okay. I very much appreciate it, and I
thank you very much.
thank you for looking at it.
Sean Riley, 5316 of Riley Lynn Road, Slidell.
Thank you. I don't know how many of you have seen the video that was done at the planning meetings. You know, we all talked a lot. Another member of our association spoke. It'd be good if everyone saw that so that they know. One of the things I want to ask for is as much participation as possible in this development. I'm very encouraged that the developer has invited the neighborhood to participate in the planning and discussions previous to the zoning changes and all that. And I'm hoping that also the parish council can participate. I know there's a lot of already laid out steps and procedures and regulations, and all of that's supposed to take care of everything. But really, this project is potentially a disaster from the point of view of some of the people that live in this neighborhood. They think it's, well, there goes the neighborhood, because it's no longer the neighborhood that they moved into or where they grew up. So I really want to just ask for as much help from the parish as it can give in encouraging the developer to cooperate with the neighborhood and for the neighborhood to participate as much as possible constructively, so that we end up with something that's better than what used to be and not something that's worse. As far as I was concerned, the PUD compared to this was just the other side of the same coin. What happens, whether it's better or not, is to be seen. So I think if more people participate, the better it'll be. And I'm on the same page as Charlotte. Everything she's given you here is got my vote. And
you wrap up your speech.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Janine Stengel.
Hello, my name is Jeannie Stengel. I live at 59385 Neslow Road, just upstream on Bayou Liberty from this area. There are many historic properties dating back to the 1700s and early 1800s, including the structure at Camp Salmon Nature Park. We are working with the Louisiana Trust for Historic Preservation to create a historic district for this area of Bayou Liberty. In addition, there are grave flood concerns for the adjacent residents. In the words of Carolyn Narcisse Rousseau, a lifetime resident, when the east wind and heavy rains or hurricanes bring in the tidal flow, water backs up to the rear of the Christine property. Please preserve the trees in the conservation area at the back 1/3 to help absorb the water, which can spill into our adjacent Creole family homes. When water floods this area, this only land route, all residents are trapped, and the only escape is by boat until the lake lets us out, when the tide flows out or the rain goes down. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stengel. Mr. Shane.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jeff Shane of the Jones Fussell Law Firm in Covington. I represent the petitioner and landowner, Logan's Trace LLC. This is an interesting case in that the comments tonight perhaps border on those that you would typically hear at an appeal hearing. With the 2 minutes that I have, I'll try to give you a brief history because I don't know what you may have in your packet. Chris Jean is the owner and developer of this property. In 2001, procured from parish government an approval to do a residential PUD, approximately 97 lots on 60 acres. The property went through the zoning commission process. It also went through the planning commission process. It procured a work order. And in fact, some of the infrastructure has been put in place on the property, but no homes have been constructed on the property. Mr. Jean did a feasibility study and determined approximately 6 months ago that he thought there would be a better use of the property, not only for him, but also, quite frankly, for the immediate neighborhood and the greater community at large. And that is, he wanted to build a state-of-the-art baseball complex on the property that would eventually have 7 baseball fields to be used by children, teenagers, young adults, older adults, men, women, weekend team ball, that type of thing. In order to do that, we filed a zoning case to change the zoning from PUD to CB1. The case was set to go to hearing in November. Mr. Stefancic asked us to pause and meet with those that had of concern in the community. From that point, we not only tabled the case, but we then met with the Bayou Liberty Board on November 10th, and in my view, got positive remarks and comments from them. We later went to a community meeting of 40 residents on November the 19th at Bayou Woods Elementary. And I might add, Mr. Stefancic was at both of those meetings. We again made a presentation and felt that we got positive comments. I appreciate your time. Let me just conclude by saying that we had a unanimous staff recommendation and a unanimous recommendation by the Zoning Commission, and hope that you will adopt this ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Shane. Thank you. Mr. Stefancic.
Yeah, I want to say that, I held several meetings on this with the board, the Bayou Liberty Association board, and also in the one that he talked about in one of my meetings, we had several people come to both those meetings, 56 at one, 62 at the other, which is pretty good turnout for that kind of a meeting. And we listened to their concerns. Most of the people, and I'm going to say most because I never can think that we'd consider everybody is going to look the same way. Most of the people left that feeling pretty well satisfied with the baseball field over the PUD. And there are some concerns, and in the letter that you received, there was a thing that said, I called the people who had filed the appeals just to talk to them, see what their concerns were, because when I left the meetings, I thought that they were in favor of it. And found out that what they're not in favor of is what she talked about tonight, Charlotte talked about tonight, is they want decibel levels, they want wider buffers, and they want other things, which can either be worked through planning or be worked through the developer and his person, but I told him we couldn't put those stipulations on a zoning case. And I mean, it's either you zone or you don't zone, and Mr. Hand is shaking his head, that's where we go. So with that in mind, they pulled their request for an appeal. And so it's before us tonight. I didn't hear them say they're against it. I think we're going to work with the developer. I think they've committed to work with us in the community to see that we try to get all the things that they want on here. We may not achieve them all, but certainly we're going to try. So I think with that in mind, I just want to say that we've worked through this process. It's been a long process to get through, and I hope that this goes through tonight so we can start getting the rest of it done and make sure that we get all the problems worked out on it. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Ordinance calendar number 5333, an ordinance to correct the road and drainage inventory, Ward 7, District 7.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Groby, seconded by, excuse me, by Mr. Gould. Any discussion? Anybody in the audience? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Ordinance calendar number 5334, ordinance amending the parish zoning map to reclassify 17.04 acres located the north of Louisiana 1085, east of Willow Bend Drive, west of Steel Court, to a PUD, Ward 1, District 3. Mr. Dean and Mr. Goo. Any discussion? Mr. Thompson was the second. Was that your district? Okay. Any other discussion? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Ordinance calendar number 5335, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 17.04 acres from I-2 to A2 to A3 Suburban District, Ward 1, District 3. Thompson and Gu made the motions and seconded it. Is there discussion? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Ordinance calendar, which one did I just do? 5335. Oh, okay. All right, next comes the appointments. And one is a resolution to appoint Wendell Richardson to replace Mark Hines. He's resigned on the board and also unfortunately passed away last week. The recommendation is Wendell Richardson, and I'd like to suspend the rules and appoint.
So moved. Mr. Chairman, yes. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of suspending the rules, please vote.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Any discussion on the resolution? All those, please vote.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Number 2 is a resolution to appoint Hunter King to replace John Travers on the Board of Directors for the St. Tammany Parish Recreation District number 6. Mr. Sharp. Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor vote. So used to saying all those in favor vote. Aye. All those opposed vote.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Resolution to appoint Todd Richard to replace Warren Montgomery, resigned on the Board of Directors of the St. Tammany Parish Recreation District number 1.
So moved.
Mr. Grovey.
Got to be quick.
Who seconded? Mr. Gu seconded. Any discussion? Please vote. Sharp and Dean. Yes, there comes Sharp.
Mr. Sharp? Motion is unanimous, one absent.
We need to do this. A motion to refer to Zoning Commission for recommendation to propose rezoning of 4.12 acres from A1 Suburban to A1A Suburban District, Ward 3, District 3. Mr. Thompson. The motion is second. I have cards. Discussion on this matter. Carlo Hernandez.
Thank you. Carlo Hernandez. I just want to point out to you, and I know the council members know that, but the public, this motion, which is the first motion like this for this year, there are 2 off the floor, which I also will speak on, that what it in effect does is waive the fees, the zoning fees for this. There was enough information on here for me to calculate that what you're waiving is $531 for this consideration. The 4.12 acres here, it's interesting that it's going from the A1, which requires a 5-acre minimum, to then A1A, which is a 3-acre minimum. So it would make sense that, all right, it's needed, but, and I won't spend a lot of time on this, but I suspect that it has another lending institution requirement here. That's probably what's dictating this, I would guess. because normally I believe the administration would go ahead, even though the 5 acres is not met. If it meets all the other regulations, they would issue the permits for any needed improvements on this lot. But if it's a lending institution, they're going to look at it and they're going to say, does it meet the 5 acre minimum? And so the answer is no, it does not. And so therefore, this is required. And I guess my question is, well, you know, someone who has the ability to own 4.12 acres, unfortunately, does not have the ability to pay the $531 in the fees that's necessary for this. And I just hope that this does not set a precedent. And unfortunately, we have 2 others that are going to follow this. That you know, I would request again that the council, please, let's quit, you know, the waiver of these fees for these considerations. And I just hope that, you know, this is the first in 2015. There are 2 more to follow. So, you know, this is unfortunately a bad precedent. Thank you.
Anybody else? Wayne Morley.
Wayne Mollier with a C, middle initial too. I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, okay, just being here. But I'm sorry, I live at 531 Normandy Drive, Folsom, Louisiana. I actually live in Marywood Estates. And so this piqued my curiosity. Mr. Hernandez just told me what it is. Going from A1 to A1A is the waiving of fees. Okay. One question I have is, they have physical address for this property. And I realize I have a chance to come to the zoning commission meeting and maybe ask the same questions. The homeowner association is active there in Marywood Estates, and they do have covenants, okay? So they're not here represented tonight, but I have to tell you, this is the first time I've seen this, okay? And I'm all over Marywood Estates. So I'll just leave it at that. If y'all can answer my questions, I appreciate it. If not, I'll come to the zoning commission meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 1 absent.
Let me have off the floor agenda. All right, at this time, we'll go into all items on off the floor. Do I have a motion to?
So move. Items 1, 2, and 3.
Items 1, 2, and 3 off the floor. Mr. Bender, Mr. Gould, and Mr. Bender. Any discussion? All in, please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 1 absent.
Number 1 is motion to refer the zoning commission for consideration to propose rezoning of parcels located adjacent to the western boundary of Fontainebleau High School. Mr. Gould.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, the motion that you have before you is to refer these properties to the zoning commission. These are this came from the recommendation of the small area study. For those in the audience that are concerned about the fees, we created the problem, so we need to fix it. So I'm going to move on the motion.
Motion made and second adopted. Mr. Hernandez.
Thank you. Caller Hernandez. You know, I did not attend the small area meetings that you, but I would have had I been aware of them. I knew that there was taking place. Unfortunately, there was a conflict. But I was present at all of the comprehensive zoning meetings, and my recollection is different from the statement made here about an era, because I recall that there was lots of discussion regarding what to put in front of Fontainebleau High School and Fontainebleau Junior High School. And I thought the consensus was, certainly between the commission members and the council, that there should be something other than heavy commercial or highway commercial on there. That was my recollection. And so therefore,
Mr. Chairman, this is a discussion of a zoning case. The motion is to refer it to the zoning commission where this discussion would be more germane and proper.
I agree, Mr. Hernandez. We're not talking about whether it's proper to do this or not. This is whether to refer it or not refer it.
Well, I thought I was speaking to that, but
No, sir.
No?
You wasn't.
Okay. All right. Well, the information that's here, although I don't know if you all looked at well, I'm sure you didn't look at the map online. The map online, you couldn't see what the area was, but I'm familiar with the area, and so I essentially knew what was being discussed, but I didn't have time to go ahead and calculate what the fees that are being waived, but I estimate that somewhere in the order of $1,000 is what I estimate the fees are going to be waived here on this, and Mr. Gould believes that it is an error on this thing. I certainly don't recall it being an error. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just as a follow-up, the Whitney Bank has a drive-through. We downzoned it from C2 to an 8 NC4, which is now a non-conforming use. We did the same thing to the vet, and there are a couple other properties that quite frankly, I didn't realize when we were doing it during the comprehensive rezoning, but that's the purpose of this, and so I'll call a question.
Question's been called for. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Number 2 is a motion to refer to the Zoning Commission for recommendation on the proposed rezoning of property from A2 to A2 and mobile home overlay. Mr. Grovey.
So moved. And
All right, wait, do we have a second?
I'm sorry.
Red Thompson, seconded. Go ahead.
I spoke to the the person who won this, and they are in the situation where it would warrant waiving other fees. This is my first time in 3 years of doing that.
Mr. Hernandez.
Thank you. My recollection is it's not the first time, but this motion is one that's going to waive $391 is my estimate. And it's interesting that it's 1.2 acres, which I estimate, and apparently, and looking at the information that was available online, again, apparently this person cannot afford $391, and I guess the message to anyone is if you can't afford it, or it's made an error, which is, of course, we've heard also, that you go to your council member and they're going to waive the fees for this. And that's exactly what's being done here. $391, $531 earlier, and I'm guessing $1,000 for the first one. So, unfortunately, I would hope that this would stop, and unfortunately, it doesn't look like it's going to. But thank you for your consideration.
Any other discussion? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Resolution to support and authorize the parish president to sign an intergovernmental agreement with Louisiana Coastal Protection and Restoration Authority. Mr. Bender. So move. Seconded by Mr. Fonzie. Discussion. Mr. Smith.
Yes, just a point of information. Is this the same group that we removed ourselves membership from? Not? Thank you.
Any other discussion? Mr. Brister, anything? All those, please vote.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Anything else that can be brought before this council at this time? If not, we will be going into an executive session to discuss item 1 on the executive session agenda and item 4 on the off-the-floor agenda. Do I hear a motion to go into executive session?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we open the agenda to go to those 2 items.
And one of them doesn't have to be open for, but one of them does.
Yes.
The one on off the floor agenda needs a
Yes.
motion to take it off, to move it on the agenda.
So moved.
Mr. Grovey, Mr. Stefanczyk, all those in favor of taking it off the agenda, please vote. Off the floor, I'm sorry.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
All right, now I need a motion. We'll recognize a motion to go into executive session.
moved.
Mr. Grovey, Mr. Belisario, please vote.
Motion
the
is
audience,
unanimous,
it's,
4 absent.
I'm sorry. For the audience recommendation, we will clear the site, and we will go into executive session. We will come back out. We will make no announcements or anything about what's affected these two executives.
Hey, Terry.
Okay.
That was missing.
All right,
Motion is unanimous, 4 absent.
Motion carried.
Chairman, I move we accept the recommendation, settle the suit on the advice of the attorney.
Motion made and second to take the advice of the attorney on the lawsuit. Any discussion?
Those people are coming back in.
Income? Stegman lawsuit.
Deputy Dog. We done? So we can come in?
You can come in.
Okay.
You can come in. We came out of executive session, and we have a motion to accept the recommendation of the attorney on the suit of Henry Stegman versus St. Tammany Parish. And we have a motion and a second, and I'm asking for discussion. I hear none. I see none. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 4 absent.
Hear a motion to adjourn. Motion made and seconded. Meeting is adjourned.